Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today we're going over the news that the Georgia Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones has officially announced that he is running for the 2026 Georgia governor's race to succeed Governor Brian Kemp. Now this is obviously very big news as Burt Jones now running. He is the second Republican to join this race after Attorney General Chris Carr announced earlier this year that he would be running. Burt Jones versus Chris Carr could become a very competitive primary, and depending on if Governor Kemp or President Trump decide to make an endorsement, that could have a very important role in this primary. So, with Burt Jones' entry into the race, as I mentioned, with Carr and Jones both now running in this race, these are the only two big Republicans in this race at this time. There has been potential interest from U.S. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. She has expressed interest in running in this race, but it remains to be seen if she ultimately decides to run or not. It is worth noting that when Marjorie Taylor Greene was still considering a run for the U.S. Senate, the Republican primary polls showed her with a high number of support. However, in the governor race, there's not been any polls so far showing what Marjorie Taylor Greene starts off at. But with just Burt Jones and Chris Carr in the race, only one poll from back in 2023 showed Burt Jones with a 9% lead over Chris Carr, with 73% undecided. So essentially on that front, there's really not too much to go off of on that side of things in terms of who's favored. But with the Lieutenant Governor of Georgia and the Attorney General of Georgia in this race, this should be a very competitive primary, and one of the top Republicans in the state of Georgia will become the Republican nominee. On the Democratic side of things, Democrats, it's still very wide open. 4 Democrats are currently running, including the former mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms. All eyes are on Stacey Abrams, the Democratic nominee for governor in 2018 and 2022. If she were to run, odds are pretty good she would have the best chance at becoming the Democratic nominee. Recently, Jeff Duncan, the former Republican lieutenant governor, has also expressed interest in potentially running for governor of Georgia as a Democrat, as well as U.S. Representative Lucy McBath. All 3 of them have expressed interest in potentially running. The hypothetical polling for that one, from that same 2023 poll, showed Stacey Abrams at 52%. All other candidates added up to about 34% on that one. This is expected to be one of the most marquee governor's races in the country in 2026. Cook Politico, Inside Elections, and Race to the White House, 3 very reliable, reputable prediction websites, have the race listed as a toss-up. Sabra Crystal Ball, another very reputable prediction website, has it listed as lean Republican. That's where things stand on that front. As for how this race has looked, well, back in 2022, Governor Brian Kemp won re-election against Stacey Abrams by 7.5% in a very competitive election that Kemp ended up winning by a pretty decent margin, a likely Republican margin. This is more what we're accustomed to see out of Georgia in the early 2000s and early 2010s, before Georgia became such a very close competitive toss-up state. Back in 2018, however, we saw what Georgia's more likely to be like in 2026, where Kemp defeated Abrams by 1.4% in a very, very close election against Abrams. Kemp getting about 1,980,000 votes or so. Abrams getting about 1,920,000 votes. So very, very close in this election as well. The state of Georgia, the presidential level, has also gotten very close in recent years. President Trump defeated Kamala Harris in 2024 in Georgia by only 2.2%. Very, very close victory there. 2020, Joe Biden narrowly flipped the state against Donald Trump by 0.24%. This was the first time Georgia went for a Democrat. You have to go back to 1992 when it went for Bill Clinton by 0.59%. This was the first time Georgia went Democrat since 1992. 2016, Trump won it by 5.1%, so the trend here has been going towards the Democratic side in recent years. The Senate level, it's been even more so. 2 Democratic senators now represent Georgia, Raphael Warnock, who won by 2.8% in 2022, and then in 2020, Jon Ossoff won by 1.2% against the Republican David Perdue. So now it's going to have to wait and see how this goes in 2026, as both Ossoff and the governor's race are on the ballot as well. But I fully expect this is going to be a very close race going into 2026. Now, when you're looking at Georgia, there's a lot of population centers in Georgia. The biggest one is Atlanta with Fulton County. This is the largest Democratic population center, but there are also its surrounding suburbs as well. These have grown more for the Democrats in recent years, and is largely the main reason that Georgia has become very competitive in recent elections. For instance, Cobb County voted for Harris 57-42. Douglas 65-34 for Harris over Trump. Fayette and Clayton 84-15 to Cobb 82-17. Gwinnett 58-41. I'm going to show you as well as a shift on the other website as well, but I just want to show you The shift from 2020, the New York Times map, shows that in these surrounding areas, Henry moved 9.2% towards the Democrats. Spalding did as well. Fayette moved 3.6%. We saw Douglas with 6.3% shift, Paulding 4.9%. Cobb County moved just a little bit, 0.6% towards Harris from 2020 to 2024. Fulton County did move 1.5% towards Trump, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not very too significant, especially when you can look at other counties like Rockdale, which moved more towards the Democrats, and Newton, Walton, and Borough. Forsyth, Cherokee moved a little bit as well. So as you can see, pretty much everywhere in Georgia moved towards the Republicans, towards President Trump. But the areas surrounding Atlanta, these were the main areas in the state to watch for. They all did continue to trend towards the Democratic side. That's why when you talk about 2026 and 2028, Democrats, despite losing the state in 2024, still have a lot of optimism in the state of Georgia due to the fact that the surrounding Atlanta area, despite Fulton County shifting towards the Republicans, all the surrounding counties pretty much shifted towards the Democrats. So Georgia's a very interesting state to watch for. It's kind of a mix of like a southern Republican state in these areas and then a big northern state in terms of the population of Atlanta and its surrounding suburbs. A very interesting state to watch for going forward. As for my most recent prediction, I currently have the state of Georgia at the governor's level going Republican in the lean Republican ranking. This would be putting the state of Georgia around a 1 to 5% victory. I don't think it's going to be any larger than that. I do have the Republicans winning right now, and I think in large part due to the fact that Georgia, with Governor Brian Kemp, who would probably be leaving office with pretty high approval ratings, the people of Georgia seem to be liking the job that Kemp is doing, and I think a very narrow election will happen where the Republicans narrowly win on that one. What's interesting is on that same ballot, I actually do have the Senate race for Georgia actually going lean Democratic, so I think it will be a split ticket, like we saw a little bit in 2024, where the Democrats win the Senate race, but the Republicans win the governor's race in 2026. On that front. And I said I wanted to show you just what the shift ended up looking like from 2020 to 2024. Oh, that's Florida. Sorry, let me go to Georgia. You can see right here, this is Fulton County, this is Atlanta, shifted 1.6% towards Trump, but DeKalb also shifted 2.6 towards Trump, Clayton 1.7, Gwinnett 1.7, Forsyth moved towards Harris 0.8, Cherokee 0.21, Cobb 0.56, Douglas shifted 6% towards Harris, Colorado 1.7, Fayette 3.6, Spalding 4.2, Henry 9.2, Rockdale 6.7, Newton and Walton 4 and 3 points, respectively. So Georgia's very interesting. 2026 should be a very important indicator of what to watch for. If the Republicans are able to win the governor's and Senate race, that could be a sign that the Republicans are putting up another strong fight in Georgia and that it's going to remain a very close state. If the Democrats do well enough to win the Senate and governor's race in Georgia in 2026, that could be a sign going to 2028. There has real potential the Democrats could win 2028, the state of Georgia, and keep it in their direction for future elections, both for governor, president, and Senate going forward. So a lot at stake in Georgia for 2026. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did. Also, make sure to leave a comment below telling me any thoughts you have or suggestions and such. Also, make sure to hit like and subscribe so you get notified when I post more videos just like this one. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you in a future video. Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today we have an interesting video out of the state of Kansas where Republican Vicki Schmidt has officially announced that she is running for the 2026 Kansas governor's race. Schmidt, who is a Kansas insurance commissioner, says she's entering the race. She is a Wichita native and previously worked as a pharmacist for over 40 years and served in the Kansas Senate before being elected insurance commissioner in 2018 and re-elected in 2022. So this is very interesting because if you're unfamiliar, the state of Kansas, when you look at the presidential level, Kansas is one of the most Republican states in the United States. It voted for Donald Trump by a safe margin of 16.1% in 2024, voted for Trump by 14.6% in 2020, and voted for Trump by 20.6% in 2016. So Kansas is a very reliably red state at the presidential level. At the Senate level, it's not really too different. In 2022, the Republican Moran won by 23 points. In 2020, it voted for the Republican Marshall by 11.4%, so a little bit more competitive in 2020. But then in 2016, the Republican Moran won by about 30 points. 2014 before that, then Republican incumbent Pat Roberts won by 10.6. So a little bit more likely than safe on that regard, but still, Kansas is still pretty reliably red at the national level. At the governor level, however, Kansas has had a Democratic governor, Laura Kelly, for the last two election cycles. In 2022, Kelly won re-election against the Republican Schmidt. Not the same Schmidt, this was Republican Derek Schmidt. It was a very close race. But Laura Kelly won 49.54% to Schmidt's 47.33%. Roughly about 500,000 votes for Kelly and about 477,000 or so votes for Schmidt. So the Democratic governor actually won re-election here in the state. Despite 2022 supposed to be a Republican wave year, didn't really end up playing out that way exactly, but Kelly was able to win re-election by 2.2%. There was some third-party candidates as well that could have taken votes away from both Kelly and Schmidt, but by 2.2%, Kelly was probably going to win regardless of how those third-party votes ended up going. 2018, which was the Democratic-friendly midterm year, this was the last real strong one-way wave Democratic or Republican midterm year. Laura Kelly got elected governor, getting 48% of the vote. The Republican, now Secretary of State Chris Kobach, got 42.98%, so about 43%. Independent candidate Greg Orman took a pretty large percent of the vote at 6.5%, away from Kelly and Kobach, but certainly more so away from Kobach than Kelly, it seems. And Caldwell, another third-party candidate, got 1.9%. This election also had Kelly getting 506,727 votes, Kobach getting 453,000. So roughly about a 50 to 51 or 50 to 60,000 vote win for Kelly in this race. So Kelly, the Democrat, has won two impressive victories now in the state of Kansas. Now, a large reason she was able to win in 2018 was the former governor of Kansas, the Republican Sam Brownback, and his administration was viewed very unpopularly in the state of Kansas, so much so that back in 2014, which was seen as one of the best Republican midterm years in a very long time, Brownback only won against the Democrat Paul Davis by 3.5% or so, getting 49.8% to 46.13%. So Brownback was certainly not very popular in 2014. Back in 2010, he won by 31 points. So that goes to show you how unliked Brownback was at that time. Just comparing the margins here, from 2022 to 2018, despite Kansas still voting for the Democrat, it did shift about 2.8% towards the Democratic side. But now I want to show you from 2014 to 2010, Kansas shifted about 27 points towards the Democratic direction. So Kansas at the governor level seems much more open to electing Democrats than at the presidential and Senate level. And I'm showing you all that now when we talk about 2026, where now Governor Laura Kelly is term limited per Kansas's constitution and cannot seek a third term. So this will be an open race. On the Democratic side of things, Cindy Hochler, a state senator, is running. Dina Sykes, the minority leader of the Kansas Senate, is also running. Two other potential candidates that I have listed here are Chris Mann, attorney and nominee for Kansas Attorney General in 2022, and David Toland, Lieutenant Governor of Kansas. He would probably be, as the Lieutenant Governor, be the highest name recognition candidate, so that could certainly be a potential candidate for the Democrats, but we'll have to wait and see how that all plays out. On the Republican side now, with Schmidt entering this race, this is going to be a very wide open race. So of all the Republicans who are running, Doug Billings, a podcaster, is running. Jeff Collier, the former governor of Kansas, who's also, if you may remember, in that Sam Brownback election, I believe it's from back in 2014, I believe it was. He was the lieutenant governor for Brownback at this time. Yeah, see, he's right here as the lieutenant governor. So he is now running in the Republican primary. Joy Eakins, former Wichita School Board member, is running, as well as Charlotte O'Hara, former Johnson County Commissioner. Stacey Rogers, consignment sale business owner, Vicki Schmidt, who I just mentioned, Kansas Insurance Commissioner, and Scott Schwab, the Kansas Secretary of State, are all running. So a lot of Republicans are in this race to be the next governor of Kansas. Also, Ty Masterson, the president of the Kansas Senate, has an announcement pending in this race. Dayton Moore, a senior advisor to the Texas Rangers and former president of the Kansas City Royals, obviously the baseball team, he has expressed interest in running as well. No other Republicans are mentioned aside from Philip Sarnecki as potential candidates at this time for this race. Right now, quick political report, Sabra Crystal Ball both have this race listed as a lean Republican victory, a flip. Inside Elections has it as a battleground. Rachel White House has it as tilt Republican. So this is very interesting because 2026 is expected to be a more friendly Democratic environment, similar to what 2018 ended up being. And in that election, we saw Kansas go for the Democrat by 5 points. But that was also after 4 years of a very or really 8 years, you can say, of a very unpopular Sam Brownback Republican administration in the state of Kansas. This time, Laura Kelly will be leaving office as the Democratic incumbent, but her approval ratings are actually very strong. So the Democrats won't have the issue of having an unpopular Democratic governor having to run to succeed. This time, they'll have a popular Democratic governor they're running to succeed, but it's going to be tougher without Laura Kelly leading the top of the Democratic ticket. As for how I have this race currently going, my most recent prediction, I have it as likely Republican. This is anywhere between a 5 to 15% margin of victory. I do think it's on the closer side. I think it's going to be about a 7 to 7.5% win right now for the Republicans over the Democrats. And I think it's going to be tough for the Democrats to win without Laura Kelly, but as recent elections have shown in Kansas, the governor elections often are more competitive and show more of an interest to elect Democrats than the presidential or Senate races, and I think we're going to see a governor's election that's going to be competitive, but the Republicans end up winning by a little bit over 5%. Looking at the map of Kansas, some larger populations areas, you have Wichita, Kansas, and Sedgwick County, voting for Trump by 14 points, 56 to 42%. Topeka, Kansas, very, very close. Harris won at 49.3 to Trump's 48.8. Very, very close here. Douglas County, 68 to 30% for Harris. Johnson County, 53-45 for Harris over Trump. And Wyandotte County, 61-37 for Harris versus Trump. Just to give you a quick look at how some of these counties have trended from 2024 to 2022, this is what the map ended up looking like. This county, Riley, also went by 1.8%. Shawnee went 0.5%. From 2024 to 2020, Kansas was very interesting. It was actually kind of a mixed bag here with a lot of counties going towards President Trump, but a lot of them also shifting towards Kamala Harris as well. A lot of them not by very large margins. Like these colors here, there's like grayish red and grayish blue. These are all tilts, meaning under 1% shifts. So Kansas had a lot of shifts in the state, but not a ton by a significant amount. Wichita shifted 5.5, Kearney 6.8, Finney 10, Grant 6.3, Seward 9.9, and Ford 6.3. These were some of the largest shifts, as well as Cloud by 6.1 and Wyandotte 7.6. But not a whole lot of large shifts outside of those ones in the state of Kansas. From 2016 to 2024, we see a lot more Democratic trending areas as well. One thing to note, though, it is worth mentioning that Johnson has shifted more towards the Democratic side. And as for that, the Wichita area with Sedgwick shifted towards Trump from 2020 to 2024. So Kansas is an interesting state. How that applies to the governor's race, we'll have to wait and see. 2026 should be a more Democratic-friendly national environment, so we'll have to wait and see how that all goes for that. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did. Leave a comment below telling me your thoughts on this video and any other video suggestions or topics you have that you would like to see me cover. Also, make sure to like and subscribe so you get notified when I post new videos going forward like this one. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you in a future video. Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today I'm going over a report from Axios which says that former Democratic Representative Sean Patrick Maloney is reportedly mulling a political comeback against Republican Representative Mike Lawler. So the former Democrat Representative Sean Patrick Maloney is considering challenging Republican Rep Mike Lawler in New York's 17th District, according to people familiar with the matter. Maloney's entrance into this race would give Democrats a proven fundraiser and a political operative in what would likely be one of the most expensive races in the country. For Maloney, a former chair of the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, it's a shot at redemption after losing to Lawler in 2022. Maloney had represented the neighboring district, New York 18, for 10 years, but decided to challenge Lawler after his residence was drawn into New York 17, which scrambled internal Democratic politics. Lawler is a key target of the DCCC as one of 3 Republicans to win a district that voted for former Vice President Kamala Harris in 2024. Lawler is also considering a run for governor, which could potentially set up a showdown in that primary with U.S. Representative Elise Stefanik. With at least 7 far-left candidates already announced in the Democratic primary for New York's 17th District, I'm sure Democrats are excited about the prospects of Sean Patrick Maloney making a comeback because it worked out so well last time, Mike Lawler posted on X. It is worth noting that Maloney has not made a final decision on this and likely won't until the fall. So this is very interesting because when you look on 270towin.com, according to the 2026 consensus ranking that they have, Republicans and Democrats are in a very close House battle for 2026. Democrats start out with about 206, Republicans start out with about 208, and you need 218 to win a House majority. And right now, New York's 17th district could play a very important role in that. Right now, this race is listed in the consensus ranking as lean Republican for U.S. Representative Mike Lawler. Now, this district, when you look at the Cook Political Voting Index, I'm going to zoom in here just to give you a closer look at it. This district right here is actually listed in the Cook PVI of Democrat +1. And as the article mentioned, it did narrowly vote for Kamala Harris in the 2024 election over Donald Trump. So the Democrats do have an advantage overall, a small one, but they do have an advantage in this district. However, Mike Lawler, the Republican, who at times I would consider to be more of a not moderate, but not a MAGA Republican, sort of in between a moderate and a MAGA Republican, has done a good enough job of being able to win over a lot of independents and suburban voters, where some Republicans have had some trouble. He's been able to win over them. So much so that we saw Mike Lawler win for the first time in 2022 in a very close election against Maloney by 0.64%. I'll be going more in depth on the county results in just one moment, but Lawler won here with 50.3% to Sean Patrick Maloney's 49.7%, and it was a very close race in 2022. Lawler won by roughly about 2,000 votes, or even under 2,000 votes in this county in 2022, getting 143,550 votes to Patrick Maloney's 141,730. So a very, very close race in 22. In 24, Lawler won by a larger margin, 6.3%, against Democrat Mondaire Jones. Here, Lawler got 52.2%, Jones got 45.9%, roughly 197,845 votes for Lawler, 173,899 for Jones. So Lawler had a much more impressive victory in 2024 than he did in 2022. However, there's an interesting thing that has to be accounted for here. In 2024, the Republicans ended up winning the national House vote by around 3%. If you want to be technical, about 2.8%. Back in 2022, they also won by about 3%. So Lawler won both times in a House environment that went for the Republicans. However, it's expected that in the 2026 midterm election year, this should be an election where the Democrats are favored to have a very good night, as historically the party that's not in charge of the White House in the midterm elections usually does very well, with very few instances of that not being the case. So 2026 should be a strong midterm environment for the Democrats. The last time the House voted for the Democrats was 2020. This was also before the new maps were redrawn, but Democrats won 50.8, Republicans 47.7, so about a 3.1% win for the Democrats. This district, was, as I mentioned, was drawn differently. Now New York 18 and New York 17, parts of it make up this district, but Maloney won then by 12.5, New York 17 won Democrat by 24.1. But when you look at the shift ratings, you can say from, let's say, 2020 to 2024, it's gone a lot redder because of how it's been redrawn. From 2020 to 2024, this district has shifted towards Mike Lawler by 5.7%. But the argument I'm making here is based on the national vote trends, this should be the least Republican this district has been in the last 3 cycles. And we can actually take a good look at this. So, as I mentioned, the Republicans won by about 3% nationally in 2024. The current Real Clear Politics generic vote is Democrats are leading by 2.4%. So from going from Republicans by 3 to Democrats by 2.4, that would roughly be a shift of approximately 5.5%. Now, that's just what it is today. We don't know what it's going to end up looking like come November of 2026. It may be more than that. I would honestly bet on it being a larger shift than that. But just for the sake of argument, let's say it's about a 5.5% shift on the House from the Republicans to the Democrats in 2026. Well, we can actually look at what this would look like on the map.jacksonjudewebsite.com. So I'm going to shift for the Democrats here. Let me go to the Democratic side. We're going to shift roughly by about 5.5. Okay, so we're going to go a 5.5% shift here. If I can get the thing to focus here. Here we go. 5.5% shift. Okay, this is what the map ends up looking like. Some areas shift more towards the Democratic side. These 2 districts that were lean Democrat go towards likely Democrat. Lawler's district goes down to tilt Republican, meaning it would be an under 1% margin of victory for Mike Lawler at a 5.5% shift. So that's 5.5%. Let's say the Democrats, when all things are said and done, actually end up winning the House by, let's say, about 3.5%. Again, we're right around what 2020 ended up being, so another percent added. This district narrowly goes in the tilt Democratic category. So this district, being already a Democratic district at the Cook PVI level by Democrat +1, Kamala Harris won it in 2024, all this would have to do is shift about 5% on the national House vote from 2024 to 2026, which the early polling shows it could definitely happen. If the Democrats only win the House vote by about 2 to 2.5% for 2026, that would probably be good enough for them to win back the House, but it would not be the massive Democratic wave that they're hoping for. Because if you're unfamiliar, in 2018, the last time there was a big wave on the midterm environment, Democrats won the House by almost 9%, by about 8.8% or so. That was or 8.6%. That was a very big win for the Democrats. They got up to 235 seats, Republicans 200. If the Democrats go somewhere in between, where it's like a 5 to 6 point win, that'd be about a 7-point shift from 2024 for the Democrats or the Republicans. That would almost certainly be enough for Lawler's district, which is now going to be this district, to end up going Democrat. So this district could be a very big indicator of how the Democrats are actually doing very early on in election night. Because New York's polls are going to close around 9 p.m., which is sort of in between kind of like the middle part of election night. A lot of those states that close at 8 p.m. and 9 p.m., but this could be a good indicator at how Democrats are doing. If Lawler's holding on here and holding on by a similar margin to 2024, that could be a sign that Republicans are in for a good night. But if the Democrats are winning this district, that could be a sign Democrats are also doing well. So as for this district, though, where things are right now, Lawler's not officially said he is going to be running for re-election. As the article mentioned, he is mulling a potential governor run as well. President Trump has already endorsed Mike Lawler for re-election in the hopes of trying to keep Lawler out of that governor's race and likely leaving the doors open for U.S. Representative Elise Stefanik to run for that. If Lawler does not run, State Senator Bill Weber has already expressed interest in running if Lawler does not, but he would not have the same strong electability that Lawler would have. It's worth noting Lawler also has about $1.3 million cash on hand, so if he does decide to run for re-election, he does have a lot of money already for what's going to be a very tough fight. On the Democratic side of things, lots of Democrats are running. Peter Chatsky, Kate Conley, Beth Davidson, Effie Phillips Staley, Jessica Rainman, Mike Sachs, and John Sullivan. But if Sean Patrick Maloney were to enter, he would immediately start out as the most well-known and highest name recognition Democrat in this race. Some organizations and political people have also endorsed some of these candidates, but again, I think that Maloney would start out as the likely favorite if he were to enter this race. Currently, Cook Politico has it lean Republican. Inside Elections has it as toss-up, as I showed you. In this district, looking more at the results from 2024 here, this district is split up amongst 4 counties: Westchester, Rockland, Putnam, and Dutchess. Westchester and Rockland are by far the 2 largest counties in this district. This is Westchester right here, and we have Rockland right here, these 2 counties right here. The closer you get to New York City and the boroughs areas, these are the larger in populations. In these 2 areas, in 2024, only being a difference of about 9,000 votes, Westchester, the largest, voted for Mondaire Jones over Mike Lawler by roughly 12%. When you look at the actual vote numbers here, that's going to be roughly 19,000 votes margin of victory Mondaire Jones got out of Westchester. In Rockland, Lawler ended up winning against Mondaire Jones in Rockland 58-40. And on this one, this is going to be about roughly 15,000 or so, 16,000 votes, about 15,000 votes out of Rockland. So the actual margin of victory or so, Mondaire Jones netted about 4,000 extra votes out of these 2 counties. But when you look at Putnam and Dutchess, these more Republican areas, they were enough to net another 10,000 votes for Lawler in this election, and for Dutchess, another 6,000 or so votes out of Dutchess County. So for the Democrats to win this election, it seems they need to try and get the margins up in Westchester as much as they can, but also try and cut into the margins in Rockland, as this is the largest or second largest county after Westchester. If they can cut this margin down to about like a 10-point win, down from an 18-point win, that could be something that gives them a much closer chance at winning. How this looked in 2022, where Lawler won district-wide by about 2,000 votes, 50.32 to 49.68. Westchester voted 59-41 for Maloney over Lawler, roughly an 18% win. So again, this was a 12-point win in 2024 and about an 18-point win in 2022. So again, this gives a pretty good roadmap for how the Democrats could do in a very close race here. Just improving these margins by about an extra 1 or 2% could go a long way in flipping this district. This gave Maloney 20,000 net votes. Rockland, which voted for Lawler by only 10 points, again, if Democrats can hit that 10-point number in Rockland, that could be a good sign that they're in for a very close race in this district. Lawler ended up netting about 11,000 or under 11,000 votes in Rockland County. So when you look at the two largest counties overall in this district, the Democrat Maloney at the time had an extra 9,000 votes or so. But then going into Putnam County, despite closer margins of victory, Lawler netted an extra 8,000. That gave the Democrat a 1,000 vote advantage at that point. And then Dutchess County, an additional 4,000 to 5,000 votes or so. That ended up with Lawler getting a very narrow victory. So for the Democrats in 2026, you have to be targeting trying to match what Maloney got in 2022, that 59-41%. If they can win it by 60-40, even better. But that Rockland number, 55-45, Democrats have to be aiming for that in Rockland County, at least getting 55-45 in Rockland, with hopes of voter turnout being a little bit lower in the midterms on the Republican end. Matching these percentages gives them a good chance at being very competitive in this district, and then trying to make inroads in Putnam and Dutchess could go a long way for the Democrats at winning this district. As for right now, though, that's where everything stands on this district. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe. If you did, leave a comment below. Tell me your thoughts on this video, on this district, and other videos you'd like to see me cover as well. Make sure to also hit like and subscribe so you always get notified when I post more videos like this one going forward. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to see you in a future video.